The bank representative, a kind young woman whose name I've already forgotten, looked at me with wide eyes, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. My voice, though trembling just moments before, had steadied into an unshakable resolve as I uttered the words I never thought I'd say: freeze all 3 accounts immediately. My hands, which had been clenching and unclenching under the table, were finally still. 30 years. 3 decades of being the family ATM, of quietly bailing them out, of sacrificing my own peace of mind. 30 years of being called out of touch and told to stay out of grown-up decisions by the very children I had raised. That day, something inside me snapped. I'd finally, irrevocably, had enough. And what happened next? Well, let's just say my children learned very quickly that Mom wasn't as clueless as they thought. My name is Diane, and I'm coming to you from a place I never imagined I'd be. Sitting in complete peace in my own home, finally living life on my own terms at 67 years old. It's a quiet strength, this peace, born from the ashes of betrayal and the fierce determination to reclaim my life. Before we dive into the raw, messy truth of this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments. There's something comforting, almost healing, about knowing we're all out here sharing our experiences, learning that we're not alone in the battles we face with our own families. Because believe me, the isolation can feel suffocating when you're caught in the whirlwind of a family drama like mine. Now, let me take you back to where this all started, because like most family disasters, this one didn't happen overnight. It was a slow burn, a gradual erosion of trust, an insidious shift I almost didn't recognize until it was too late. For 32 years, I was married to a truly wonderful man named Robert. He was a mechanical engineer, brilliant and steady, and I worked as a nurse at the county hospital until I was 60. Together, we built a good life. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were comfortable. We had a nice 4-bedroom home in the suburbs, 2 cars that ran well, and most importantly, we had savings. Robert was meticulous about planning for the future. Every month, without fail, money went into retirement accounts, emergency funds, and a separate investment account. He instilled in me, and tried to instill in our children, the value of delayed gratification, the quiet power of consistency. When Robert passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I was devastated. The world tilted on its axis. We were supposed to travel together in retirement, supposed to grow old watching our grandchildren play in the backyard. We had plans, dreams, a shared vision of our golden years. But life, as it often does, had different, crueler plans. Along with my grief, a grief that still grips me some days, Robert left me something else: financial security. Between his life insurance, our carefully built savings, and my own retirement funds, I had just over $750,000. To some people, I know that might not sound like much, but to me, it represented decades of careful planning, sacrifice, and the unwavering belief that we were building a safe harbor for our old age. It meant I could live comfortably for the rest of my life without worry, without having to pinch pennies or fear the unexpected. It was my legacy, our legacy. I have 3 children: Tom, who's 41, Lisa, who's 38, and Michael, who's 35. I love them more than anything in this world, I truly did. I raised them to be independent, to work hard, to value family above all else. And for years, I thought I'd done a decent job. Tom is a sales manager at a car dealership. He's always been charismatic, the kind of person who could sell ice to someone living in Alaska. A natural charmer, always with a quick smile and an even quicker excuse. Lisa works in marketing for a mid-size company, though she's changed jobs 5 times in 10 years, always looking for something better, always convinced the grass was greener elsewhere. Michael is in tech, or at least that's what he tells people. He's had a series of startups that never quite took off, always convinced the next big idea is just around the corner, often at my expense. After Robert died, my children rallied around me. They helped me with the funeral arrangements, stayed with me during those first terrible weeks, called me every day. I was so grateful to have them, my anchors in a sea of sorrow. But somewhere along the way, that support started to shift into something else entirely. It started innocently enough. About 6 months after Robert passed, Tom called me one evening, his voice tight with stress, a familiar note of panic I would soon come to dread. "Mom, I'm in a bit of a bind. The dealership sales have been slow, and my commission this month is going to be terrible. Jessica and I need to make the mortgage payment, and we're about $1,500 short. Could you help us out just this once?" Of course, I helped. That's what mothers do, isn't it? He was my son, and he promised to pay me back within 2 months. I transferred the money that same day, my heart aching for his struggle. 2 weeks later, Lisa called. "Mom, you know that position I interviewed for? They want me, but it's in a different department, and they can't start me for another month. I'm going to have a gap in my paycheck. Could you spot me $3,000 to cover my rent and bills? I'll pay you back as soon as the new position starts." Again, I helped. My children were struggling. Or so I believed, and I had the means to ease their burden. Then Michael showed up at my door with elaborate plans for his new app idea. "Mom, this is it. This is the one that's going to make it big. I just need $50,000 for development and marketing. Think of it as an investment. When this takes off, I'll pay you back triple." $50,000. That was a bigger ask, a number that made me hesitate. But Michael showed me charts and projections, testimonials from beta users, a whole polished presentation. He was so passionate, so utterly convinced, and I thought, maybe this is how I could help him finally succeed, finally find his footing. So, with a deep breath and a prayer, I wrote the check. That was 3 years ago. Tom never paid back the $1,500. Lisa's temporary loan turned into a regular monthly request, a never-ending stream of "just this once more." And Michael's app? It launched, got a few hundred downloads, and then disappeared into the digital void like all his other ventures, taking my $50,000 with it. But the money kept flowing. Every month, someone needed something: car repairs, medical bills, credit card payments, a new laptop, dance classes for the grandkids, a small vacation to relieve stress. $500 here, $1,000 there, sometimes $5,000 at once. I kept a ledger. It's something Robert taught me. Always track your money. In 3 years, I'd given my children just over $280,000. Almost a third of Robert's legacy, gone, piece by piece. The real problem wasn't just the money, though. It was the attitude that came with it. I started to notice the change about a year ago, subtle at first, then growing bolder, more entitled. I'd make suggestions about budgeting, about cutting unnecessary expenses, about living within their means. The responses became increasingly dismissive, laced with thinly veiled contempt. "Mom, things are different now than when you were working. You don't understand how expensive everything is." "That's old-school thinking, Mom. You have to spend money to make money. We're not living in the 1980 seconds anymore. The economy works differently." I bit my tongue, a bitter taste in my mouth. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was out of touch. After all, I'd been retired for 7 years. What did I truly know about the current job market or modern expenses? I doubted myself, as mothers often do, wanting to believe the best in my children. But then I started noticing other things. Tom drove a brand new BMW even though he claimed money was tight. Lisa posted pictures from a spa weekend while still owing me money from the previous month. Michael wore a Rolex and ate at expensive restaurants 3 times a week while supposedly bootstrapping his startup. It was a stark contrast to their pleas of poverty, and it gnawed at me. When I gently mentioned these observations, the responses became sharp, defensive, and accusatory. "Mom, you need to let us live our lives. We're adults. We know what we're doing." Then came the line that truly stung, a venomous dart thrown casually by Lisa. "Just because you and Dad lived like misers doesn't mean we have to." Robert and I hadn't lived like misers. We'd lived responsibly. We'd taken vacations, enjoyed nice dinners, bought quality things when we needed them, but we hadn't pretended to have money we didn't have. We lived within our means, built a future, saved for a rainy day. That comment, like a splash of cold water, was the first real warning sign that something was deeply wrong, a fundamental disconnect in values. The incident that changed everything, the absolute pivot point, happened on a Saturday afternoon in late October. All three of my children came over for what I thought would be a nice family dinner. I'd spent all day making Robert's famous pot roast, homemade rolls, apple pie from scratch. The house smelled wonderful, a comforting aroma of home and tradition, and I was looking forward to an evening filled with laughter and love. Instead, they sat me down at my own dining room table for what they chillingly called a family meeting. Tom started, his voice deceptively smooth. "Mom, we've been talking, and we're worried about you." My heart jumped into my throat. Worried? Why? "I'm fine," I said, a tremor in my voice. "The doctor says I'm healthy as a horse." "It's not your health," Lisa interjected, her eyes avoiding mine. "It's your financial decisions." I blinked, trying to process her words. My financial decisions? Michael pulled out a folder. An actual folder, as if this was a business presentation, not a conversation with his mother. "Mom, you're 67 years old, living alone in a 4-bedroom house that's way too big for you. Your property taxes are ridiculous. The maintenance costs are through the roof. You're hemorrhaging money on this place. This is my home," I said slowly, a cold knot forming in my stomach. "Your father and I bought this house 40 years ago. I raised you here." "Exactly," Tom said, pressing his advantage. "It's a family home and you're here alone. It doesn't make sense financially. We think you should sell." The room suddenly felt very cold, the comforting smells of dinner replaced by an icy dread. "Sell my home? Downsize to a nice apartment or a condo," Lisa said, using that fake, sweet voice people use when they think they're being reasonable, when they're trying to sell you something you don't want. Something modern, low maintenance. You could free up a lot of equity. "Equity that you're just sitting on," Michael added, his eyes gleaming. "It's not doing anything for you. You could invest it. Make it work for you." I felt my face flush, a sudden surge of heat and shame. "I'm perfectly comfortable managing my own finances, thank you. And I happen to like my home." "Mom, that's exactly the attitude we're talking about," Tom said, leaning forward, as if reasoning with a difficult child. "You're stuck in old ways of thinking. The financial landscape has changed dramatically. There are opportunities now that didn't exist when you and Dad were building your retirement." "What kind of opportunities?" I asked, though a chilling suspicion was beginning to crystallize in my mind, a dark premonition of where this was heading. Michael's eyes lit up, his usual restlessness replaced by an almost manic intensity. "I'm glad you asked. I've been talking to some people, serious investors, about a new venture. It's in the cryptocurrency space, but with a real-world application that—" "No," I said firmly, cutting him off. "I'm not investing in cryptocurrency." "See, this is the problem," Lisa exclaimed, actually rolling her eyes at me. "You hear cryptocurrency and you immediately shut down because you don't understand it. Mom, people are making millions in this space. People are also losing millions." I countered, my voice tight. "That's because they don't know what they're doing," Michael said, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. "But I've been studying this for 2 years. I know the right moves to make. With a significant investment, say $100,000, we could turn that into $1 million in 18 months. "No, Michael," I said, my voice gaining strength. "No, I've already given you $50,000 that I never saw again. I'm not giving you another $100,000 to gamble with." The room went silent, thick with unspoken resentment. Tom and Lisa exchanged glances, a silent communication of exasperation. "Mom," Tom said carefully, "you need to understand that we're not asking you to give us anything. We're trying to help you make smart decisions with your money before you make mistakes that could jeopardize your future." Something about the way he said that, the patronizing tone, made my stomach churn. "What are you talking about? You're getting older," Lisa said, her voice dripping with false concern. "People your age sometimes make poor financial decisions, they fall for scams, or they're not as sharp as they used to be. We're just looking out for you. Are you suggesting I'm senile? My voice came out sharper than I intended, laced with a fury I hadn't realized I was capable of. Of course not, Tom said quickly, trying to backtrack. But Mom, you have to admit you're not exactly a financial expert. You were a nurse. Dad handled all the investments when he was alive. Now you're trying to manage everything alone. And frankly, we're concerned you might not be making the best choices. The best choices? I repeated slowly, the anger simmering just beneath the surface, like giving away nearly $300,000 to my children in 3 years. Michael actually laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. Mom, that's called helping your family. That's called being a parent. Did you ever think that maybe we needed times that money? That we were struggling. Struggling while driving new BMWs and taking spa vacations, I retorted, no longer bothering to hide my contempt. Here we go again, Lisa muttered, rolling her eyes. Mom, you need to stop keeping track of every dollar we spend. It's controlling and unhealthy. I keep track because I'm the one providing those dollars, I said, feeling my blood pressure rising, a hot flush spreading across my face. And none of you have paid me back a single cent. Because we're family, Tom said, as if that explained everything, as if family was a magic word that excused all transgressions. Families help each other. You're supposed to help us. That's what parents do. And what do children do? I asked quietly, the question hanging in the air, heavy and unanswered. Then Michael leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips, and said the words that would change everything, the words that would ignite a firestorm I didn't know I had within me. Mom, we're adults now. These are grown-up decisions. And honestly, you need to stay out of them. We know what we're doing with our lives and our finances. What we need from you is support, not judgment, and certainly not lectures about responsibility from someone who doesn't understand how the modern world works. Stay out of grown-up decisions, I repeated, feeling something cold and hard forming in my chest, a resolve solidifying where doubt had once resided. Exactly, Lisa said, apparently missing the danger in my tone, the ominous stillness that had fallen over me. We love you, Mom. We really do. But you need to trust that we're capable adults who can handle our own lives. Your job is to be our mother, not our financial advisor. Just keep supporting us the way you have been, and let us make our own choices without the constant criticism. I looked at each of my children in turn. Tom, confident and entitled. Lisa, dismissive and superior. Michael, already dreaming of his next big score, oblivious to the hurt he'd caused. And I realized something that should have been obvious months ago. They didn't see me as their mother anymore. They saw me as a bank, a convenient source of funding that came with minimal strings and no expectation of repayment. I see, I said quietly. Well, thank you all for your input. I'll certainly think about what you've said. They seemed pleased with that, assuming I'd been properly managed, dismissed like an errant employee. They stayed for dinner, ate my pot roast, complimented my cooking, and left with smiles and kisses on the cheek. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, driven by a gnawing suspicion and a broken heart, I did something I'd never done before, something that felt both desperate and absolutely necessary. I hired a private investigator. I know how that sounds. Spying on your own children seems like a terrible breach of trust, but they'd been lying to me. I was certain of it. The question was, about what? The investigator, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah, who came highly recommended by my lawyer, was professional and discreet. I told her I needed to know how my children were actually spending their money. Were they really struggling, or was I being manipulated? The truth, no matter how painful, felt like my only path forward. It took her 3 weeks to compile the report. When she came to my house to present her findings, I made tea with shaking hands, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I knew, deep down, that my life was about to change forever. Mrs. Patterson, Sarah began gently, her voice cutting through the silence of my sunroom. I'm going to be direct with you because I think you can handle it. Your children are not in financial difficulty, at least not the kind they've been claiming. The words were a confirmation of my worst fears, yet somehow they also brought a strange clarity. She opened her folder and showed me photographs and documents, a meticulously compiled ledger of their true financial lives. Tom's salary at the dealership was actually quite substantial, over $90,000 a year plus commissions. His wife Jessica was a dental hygienist, making $55,000. Together, they had a household income of nearly $150,000 annually. But they also had consumer debt of over $80,000, credit cards mostly, and I saw the receipts. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, season tickets to sporting events, a timeshare in Florida they'd purchased on impulse. They were living not just paycheck to paycheck, but beyond it, propped up by a mountain of debt and, as it turned out, my generosity. Lisa's situation was similar. She made $70,000 at her marketing job, a perfectly respectable income, but she had maxed out 6 credit cards and had taken out a personal loan for $25,000 to consolidate debt. She was living in an apartment that cost $2,500 a month when she could easily find something suitable for $1,500. It wasn't about need, it was about desire, about maintaining a curated image, a lifestyle they couldn't genuinely afford. Michael was the worst. His startup wasn't a real business at all. He had no actual product, no viable business plan, no investors besides me. The $50,000 I'd given him 3 years ago had gone toward maintaining his lavish lifestyle. The Rolex, the expensive dinners, the designer apartment in the trendy part of town. He worked part-time at a tech support job, making $40,000 a year, and spent the rest of his time networking at expensive restaurants and bars. Always certain his big break was just around the corner, always believing that success was a matter of optics, not actual work. But here's what really broke my heart, what twisted the knife deep into my soul. Sarah had discovered they were planning something truly insidious. She'd found emails, detailed conversations, a cold, calculated blueprint for my future. They were planning to pressure me to sell my house and move into a retirement community. They'd already researched facilities, talked to a real estate agent about listing my property. According to their calculations, my house would sell for around $450,000. After I paid off the remaining mortgage of $80,000, I'd have $370,000 in cash. And they'd even divided it up already. Tom wanted $100,000 for a business opportunity. Lisa needed $80,000 to pay off her debts and start fresh. Michael wanted to officially invest $150,000 in his next venture. The remaining $40,000 would be enough to get me set up in a nice little apartment. They hadn't asked me. They just decided. And they were working together on how to convince me it was in my best interest. I sat in my kitchen holding that report, the crisp papers feeling like heavy stones in my hands, and I cried. Not because of the money, though that hurt, a deep, sharp ache of betrayal. I cried because my own children, the babies I'd nursed and raised and loved unconditionally, saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their financial gain, a piggy bank they intended to smash open. The love I felt for them was still there, a wounded, limping thing, but it was overshadowed by a crushing wave of hurt and anger. This wasn't about being out of touch. This was a systematic plan to strip me of my autonomy, my home, my legacy, all for their selfish desires. I didn't make my decision in anger. I made it in clarity, forged in the crucible of that unbearable pain. For 3 days, I sat with the information Sarah had given me. I prayed about it, something I hadn't done with such fervor since Robert died. I journaled, filling pages with my raw emotions, my doubts, my dawning resolve. I called my sister in Arizona, a woman of unshakable common sense, and told her everything, her gasps of shock a balm to my raw nerves. And slowly, meticulously, a plan formed. If my children wanted to treat me like a bank, then I would act like a bank. And banks, I decided, have rules. Banks demand accountability. I made an appointment with my financial advisor, a sharp, empathetic woman named Patricia, who'd been helping me manage my investments since Robert died. I showed her the investigator's report, watching her professional demeanor falter, her eyes softening with genuine concern. "Oh, Diane," she said softly, "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," I told her, my voice steely. Just help me protect myself. Together, we restructured everything. First, we set up a trust with my lawyer. My house, my investments, everything went into it. I was the trustee, with my sister as the backup. The terms were clear. None of my children would inherit until after my death. And even then, the trust would evaluate whether they'd made reasonable efforts to become financially responsible. No more free rides, no more inherited entitlement. Then came the bank accounts. Patricia helped me understand that I'd been added to all 3 of my children's checking accounts over the years. Tom's when he'd bought his house, Lisa's during a previous financial crisis, and Michael's to help him establish business credit. They'd assured me it was temporary, just to help them get approved for things. It turned out those accounts were still active, with my name on them. I had full access. More importantly, I had full authority. It felt like a small, unexpected twist of fate, a hidden card I could play. On a Tuesday morning in November, I walked into the bank and met with the manager, a kind man named George, who'd known our family for years. His expression was one of gentle concern, clearly sensing the gravity of my visit. "George," I said, my voice unwavering, "I need to freeze 3 accounts immediately." George looked uncomfortable, his brow furrowed. "Diane, are you sure? This is a big step. I'm positive. I have legal authority on these accounts, and I'm exercising it. Freeze all transactions, no withdrawals, no transfers, nothing. This is going to cause problems with your children," he warned gently. "Good," I said, a bitter satisfaction rising in my chest. "They told me to stay out of grown-up decisions. Well, this is a grown-up decision. Let them handle it." George processed the paperwork. Within an hour, all 3 accounts were frozen. Then, I took it a step further. I called the credit card companies where I was listed as an authorized user or co-signer. I removed myself from everything. I called the phone company and canceled the family plan I'd been paying for, a monthly expense I'd simply absorbed for years. I called the insurance company and removed them from my auto insurance policy that had been giving them a family discount. I systematically cut off every financial connection that gave them access to my money or resources. It felt surgical, precise, and utterly necessary. Then I went home and waited. I didn't have to wait long. My phone started ringing at 2:47 p.m. "Tom." I didn't answer. Then Lisa at 3:15. Then Michael at 3:30. Then all 3 of them calling over and over, their names flashing across my screen like frantic distress signals. I let it go to voicemail, listening to their escalating panic with a detached sort of calm. Tom's message, "Mom, there's something wrong with my bank account. My card got declined at lunch. Can you call me back?" Lisa's message, "Mom, I tried to pay my electric bill and the payment wouldn't go through. There must be a mistake. Call me." Michael's message, laced with fury, "Mom, what the hell? My account is frozen. This is seriously messing up my day. Fix this." I didn't call any of them back that night. The next morning, Tom showed up at my door at 7:30 a.m. His face a mask of indignation and bewilderment. I was already awake, having my coffee in the sunroom, the morning light a stark contrast to the storm brewing outside. I opened the door and looked at him calmly. "Mom, what's going on? My bank account is frozen. Jessica couldn't pay for groceries yesterday. We had to borrow money from her mother. How embarrassing for you," I said, my voice flat, devoid of the sympathy he expected. He stared at me. "What? How embarrassing that must have been for you," I continued, meeting his gaze squarely, having to ask someone else for money. "What did you tell Jessica's mother? That you make $150,000 a year but couldn't buy groceries?" Tom's face paled, then flushed red. "How do you know that, Mom? That's private financial information." "Is it?" I countered, a bitter smile touching my lips. "Because my financial information didn't seem very private when the 3 of you held a family meeting to discuss selling my house without my consent." The color drained completely from his face. "Who told you?" "We were just talking. We haven't done anything. You divided up the proceeds," I said quietly, the memory of Sarah's report burning fresh in my mind. "You already decided how to spend my money. The money from my home, the home where I raised you. Mom, we were just exploring options, he stammered, scrambling for an excuse. Did you ask me about these options? When? Before or after you listed my house? He stammered again, unable to respond, his charade crumbling around him. Let me be very clear, Tom. You told me to stay out of grown-up decisions, so I'm making a grown-up decision. I've removed myself from all your accounts. I've canceled all services I was paying for on your behalf. From this moment forward, you're on your own. You can't do this, he cried, desperation creeping into his voice. I absolutely can, and I have. You're an adult making adult decisions, remember? So, make them without my money. Mom, you're being irrational. Am I? Let me tell you what's irrational, Tom. It's irrational to make nearly $150,000 a year and still need money from your elderly mother. It's irrational to buy season tickets and designer clothes while claiming you can't make your mortgage. It's irrational to treat your mother like an ATM machine and then act shocked when the ATM stops working. I can explain the debt. I don't want explanations. I want you to leave. Leave now, and tell your brother and sister they're not welcome here either until they can treat me with respect. Tom stood there for a moment longer, looking like I'd slapped him, the reality of my resolve finally sinking in. Then he turned and left without another word. The next week was brutal. All three of them called constantly. They showed up at my door. They sent me text messages that ranged from apologetic to angry to manipulative. Lisa came by crying, claiming she was going to lose her apartment. I later found out from Sarah, my investigator, that she'd actually asked her landlord for an extension and gotten it, but she wanted me to think she was facing homelessness, a final, desperate play for my pity. Michael came by with a different approach. He was furious. He stood on my porch and yelled about how I was ruining his life, destroying his opportunities, sabotaging his future. He called me selfish and vindictive. He said I'd never supported his dreams. You're right, I told him calmly through the closed door. I never supported your dream of living off your mother while pretending to be an entrepreneur. That dream is officially dead. He kicked my door and left. Tom tried reasoning. He came by with Jessica, thinking his wife might soften me. They sat on my porch. I wouldn't let them in and told me they understood I was upset, but I was being extreme. They promised to pay me back every cent starting next month. They had a plan. They'd cut back on expenses. They'd be more responsible. Do you think I'm stupid? I asked them, my voice flat. You've had 3 years to cut back on expenses. You've had 3 years to pay me back. You never intended to do either. You intended to keep taking until I had nothing left. That's not true. Jessica protested, her voice shrill. Tom, tell her that's not true. But Tom couldn't look me in the eye. They left. The worst part, the absolute emotional low, was the messages from my grandchildren. Tom and Lisa had clearly coached them. My 10-year-old grandson sent me a drawing with "I miss you, Grandma" written on it. Lisa's daughter left me a voicemail saying she didn't understand why Grandma was mad at Mommy. That almost broke me. The pain of it was a physical ache, a cruel twisting of my heart. But I called my sister, and she reminded me, her voice a lifeline. Diane, you're not punishing your grandchildren, you're teaching your children that actions have consequences. If Tom and Lisa have to explain to their kids why they can't afford something, that's on them, not you. She was right. 2 weeks into the freeze, something interesting happened, a glimmer of light in the darkness. I got a call from Jessica's mother, Karen, who I'd always gotten along with nicely, a sensible woman. Diane, she said, her voice laced with concern. I think we need to talk. Tom and Jessica came to us asking for a $20,000 loan. They made it sound like you'd cut them off completely without reason, like you were being irrational and cruel. But I know you, and I know there's more to this story. I invited her over for coffee. I showed her everything. The ledger of money I'd loaned, the investigator's report, the emails about selling my house. Karen's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, disgust. That son of a, she caught herself. Diane, I had no idea. Tom made it sound like you'd lost your mind. Maybe I have, I said tiredly. a sliver of doubt still clinging to me. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Too harsh. Karen shook her head firmly, her eyes blazing with righteous indignation. Honey, you're not being harsh enough. When Tom and Jessica came to us begging for money, you know what they said? They said they needed it for a down payment on a rental property, an investment opportunity they couldn't miss. They weren't even honest about being in debt. My stomach turned, a fresh wave of nausea. Karen continued, I'm calling Jessica right now. She's going to hear exactly what I think of this situation. And Diane, don't you dare feel guilty. Those three need to grow up, and if it takes losing access to your money to do it, so be it. After Karen left, I sat in my kitchen feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks, validated. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was simply refusing to be used anymore. 3 weeks after I froze the accounts, all 3 of my children showed up together. I saw them through the window standing on my porch, clearly having coordinated this ambush, their faces grim and determined. I almost didn't open the door, but I realized we needed to have this conversation eventually, a final reckoning. I let them in but didn't offer them seats. Mom, Tom started, clearly elected as the spokesperson, his voice heavy with forced calm. We need to talk about this situation. What situation? I asked coolly, my voice betraying none of the turmoil inside. You know what situation. You've frozen our accounts, canceled our phone service, removed yourself from our insurance. You've cut us off completely. I've stopped enabling you, I corrected, my voice steady. There's a difference. We're your children. Lisa burst out, her voice trembling with accusation. How can you do this to us? How could you do this to me? I countered, the dam finally breaking, my voice rising in measured intensity. How could you take nearly $300,000 from me and never pay back a cent? How could you plan to force me to sell my home so you could split the proceeds? How could you look me in the eye and claim to be struggling while spending money on luxuries? You had a private investigator follow us. Michael was incredulous, his face contorted in disbelief. That's a massive invasion of privacy. You plan to sell my house without my knowledge. My voice, for the first time, rose in raw, unbridled fury. You don't get to talk to me about privacy. You forfeited that right when you began plotting my financial ruin. We weren't actually going to do it without talking to you first, Tom said weakly, a flicker of panic in his eyes. Really? Because those emails said otherwise. They said you were working on the best approach to convince me, the best way to overcome my resistance. You treated me like an obstacle, Tom. All of you did. Silence fell over the room, heavy and suffocating, thick with their shame and my pain. Finally, Lisa spoke, her voice small, a fragile whisper. We didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? No answer. Let me tell you what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady now, resolute. I will not give any of you another cent, not a loan, not a gift, nothing. You will not inherit my house. I've set up a trust that evaluates financial responsibility before distributing assets. If you want anything from me when I'm gone, you'll need to prove you can manage your own finances first. You can't be serious, Michael said, aghast. I'm completely serious. Additionally, until each of you can prove you've taken financial responsibility seriously, and I mean actually seriously, not just promising to do better, I don't want a relationship with you. You're choosing money over your own children. Lisa's voice broke, tears welling in her eyes. No, I said firmly, meeting her gaze. You chose money over your mother. You saw me as a source of funding, not as a person. You told me to stay out of grown-up decisions while refusing to make responsible decisions yourselves. You wanted me to trust you while you planned to betray that trust. Mom, we made mistakes, Tom said, trying one last appeal to my maternal instincts. But completely cutting us off. I'm not cutting you off, I interrupted. I'm offering you something better than money. I'm offering you the opportunity to stand on your own 2 feet, to learn to budget, to sacrifice, to work hard for what you want. The lessons your father and I tried to teach you, but that you never had to learn because I kept bailing you out. This is punishment, Michael said bitterly, his face a mask of resentment. No, I replied, my voice holding no room for debate. Punishment would be reporting the fraud Lisa committed when she told me she needed money for medical bills but spent it on a vacation. Punishment would be telling all your friends and colleagues exactly how financially irresponsible you've been. This isn't punishment. This is me finally treating you like the adults you claim to be. I pulled out 3 envelopes I'd prepared with my lawyer, crisp white papers that held the terms of our future. I'm giving each of you these, I said, holding them out. Inside is a proposal. If you want to repair our relationship, here's what needs to happen. First, you'll meet with a financial counselor. I've already arranged and paid for 3 sessions each. Their eyes widened. Second, you'll create a realistic budget and stick to it for 6 months. Third, you'll pay back at least 10% of what you owe me. 10%. Michael sputtered, indignant. That's for you, Michael. That's $5,000 over 6 months. That's less than $1,000 a month. If you can't manage that, then you've proven you have no intention of ever paying me back. And if we do all this, Tom asked, a glimmer of desperate hope in his eyes, then we can slowly rebuild our relationship. I'll meet you for coffee. We can have Sunday dinners again. I can see my grandchildren regularly, but there will be boundaries. No more asking for money. No more expecting me to solve your financial problems. No more treating me like a safety net while you make reckless decisions. And if we don't, Lisa asked quietly, her voice almost inaudible, then you've made your choice. You'll have chosen your pride and your lifestyle over your relationship with your mother. I handed them the envelopes. The choice is yours, I said. You told me to stay out of grown-up decisions. Well, this is a grown-up decision. Make it wisely. That was 4 months ago. Tom and Jessica were the first to comply. It took them a month of angry phone calls and bitter texts, but eventually, they met with the financial counselor. They started sending me $200 every 2 weeks. Not much, but consistent. Last week, Tom called and asked if we could meet for lunch. We did. It was awkward at first, a heavy silence hanging between us, but we talked. Really talked. He apologized. A real apology, not a sorry you're upset, non-apology. He admitted they'd been taking advantage of me, that their spending was out of control, fueled by an insatiable need to keep up appearances. He told me the counselor had opened his eyes to how dangerously close they were to losing everything. It was a small step, but it was a step towards genuine understanding. Lisa took longer. She was angry for weeks, posting passive-aggressive things on social media about family betrayal and blood being thicker than water. But eventually, her daughter's 11th birthday came up, and Lisa called me crying, not because she needed money, but because she realized her daughter was asking why Grandma wasn't coming to her party. That was the crack in her armor. She met with the counselor the next week. She's working 2 jobs now to pay down her debt. She's moved to a smaller, more affordable apartment. And last month, she sent me her first payment, $500, with a note that simply said, "I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it." There's a long road ahead for both of them, but I see a flicker of hope, a potential for redemption. Michael hasn't responded. He's still living in his expensive apartment, still posting about his next big venture on social media, still convinced he's one break away from massive success. He told Tom I'm dead to him, that he doesn't need a mother who would abandon him like this. It hurts. I won't lie about that. There's a raw ache in my heart where my youngest son used to be, a void that may never be filled. But I also know, with a clarity forged in fire, that this was the only way. The peace I feel now, sitting in my home, is real. It's the peace of knowing I stood up for myself, of reclaiming my narrative, and that, more than any money, is a legacy worth fighting for.